chat. Come on then, people. I'm going to need questions for Elstonation tonight. So at Wargamer Online at the start of your question, and let's see what we can get on the chat. Hey everyone, don't forget to hit like and subscribe and hit the little bell icon. Whoa, somewhere over there. Hit the little bell icon so you get notifications when we're going live. See you in a few minutes. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Wednesday night chat. So, yeah, it's not a regular show for us. This is a little bonus, added extra content for all our wonderful wargamers out there. Tonight, I'm being joined by Elstonation, and a little bit of history. It's no good waving yet, Elston. You're not on screen. and so it's going to be one of those nights, I think. So yes, Elstonnation's joining me. As you know, fans of the show will know, he's popped up on the chat loads of times, and I'm always blown away by the volume of painting he put on. So he seemed to be the person to ask, how do you speed paint and still get good results? Because he does fantastic work. So without further ado, let's bring up Mr. Elstonation. There you are. Hi, Elstonation. How you doing?
Hello, I'm alive. Hello. How are
Well,
you? How is everyone this fine evening?
well, I'm hoping everybody can hear you okay. If people can say that's good,
Cool.
and let us know how we're doing. But I'll tell you
If
what,
not, I'll get
Elstonation,
really
if you
close.
can give me a couple of minutes, let's just go through the chat, and we'll see what people have got to say and where they are. So let's have a quick catch up on the chat. So Medic 6666 was in early, nice and early. Sam's out there as well, bro fisting me. I think there's a little punch there. I think he's just found he can do emoji cons on the chat, so he's pretty excited about that. Furious George is in the chat, and Reaper 28 Grim is in there with Valrakian Heresy starting all over the place. And well, there's some good chat going on actually. Patrick's in the chat as well. Hey Patrick, how you doing? Furious George. And there was a good bit of chat going on about, can a las rifle penetrate the fiber bundles of a Marine's armor if fired at point blank? And if you've skewered said Marine with the bayonet first. So if people want to put their opinion in on that, I think that's a fair say to do.
That's an
I dare
interesting.
say the speed of the reflexes of the Marine would be your issue. You might do some damage with the last shot, but he's going to turn around and
I've,
bop you on the head, isn't he?
yeah, I've heard of last shots going through the eyepiece, so I don't know about the fiber bundles. That'd be an
Yeah.
interesting one.
Okay, so
Would it
anyway,
do much damage?
I don't know. That's the debate. Of course, Beal Tan with their Swordwind and Shurikens might do a bit of damage.
Yeah, I read the rules on the. Oh, you are a lucky man.
Right, okay, so what have we got going off as well in the chat? So let's catch back up again. Right, that was all the chat. Derpnimus Maximus has joined us. Who else have we got in the chat? Say hi if you're in the chat, by the way, and I'll give you a shout out. The Alt Boys is in. Oh, cry. Ray Minto's joined us. And who else have we got? Tom Wilson. That's cool. Stalker 40k is in there. We've got a few questions as well. So again, if people have got questions for Elstonation, just put at Wargamer Online at the start to help me out and spot them, and that really helps me. Who else have we got? Yano14 saying hi. Hi, how you doing, man? Johnny Rockstar coming in saying evening all. 676 Mitch Chesterfield. Oh, Chesterfield. I'm from Chesterfield originally, so there you go. That's a little shout out to my hometown. Who else have we got? Luca. Hey Luca, how you doing? And Akaria is in. Good man. How you doing, Akaria? It's always good to see you in on the chat. Furious George, Scott Beale. Hey Scott Beale, how you doing? Cy H is in there. Yo, Graham Rigg, evening. And Vaughan Killian saying howdy y'all. So howdy, how you doing, Vaughan? It's good to see you in the chat. Right, so tonight's main theme then is just a bit of a. It really chats a bit formal, isn't it, Elstonation? It should have been a hobby hangout,
Yeah.
really. I don't think we're going to be terribly on formal terms tonight.
No, that's not really how I usually roll. So yeah, that's all right. See how it goes.
So what I want to do, we've got some work that you've been working on. Want to have a look at some of your projects, but maybe what we should start with is some questions from the chat because we've got a few on there. So let's
Cool.
just jump back up a second. Right. So this is from Reaper Grim, 28 Grim. So what army does Elstonation play?
I play currently in 30k and 40k. I play Thousand Suns, and in Age of Sigmar, I play Destruction, mainly Iron Jaws, but I've started adding some new bits and bobs to it at the moment. So I'm just going with a Destruction overview. However, I am intending on starting Skaven relatively soon. So we'll
Right.
see I've
Skaven.
got a bit of a plan on that one.
They're a beautiful looking army. We've just had a donation from Patrick. Thank you. Patrick, he says, nice idea to invite Elstonation and give us all some tips and tricks. I missed the rest of the line, but thank you very much, Patrick. You're a star. You really are a star, and you're a big supporter of the channel.
You've
So
got the
thank you
bestest
so much.
fans. They're amazing.
Yeah,
Your
they're
fans.
all amazing. All Wargamer Online fans are the best fans out there ever. So thank you very much. Again, much appreciated. And Sam's got so many plans at the moment, so all of this is helping, and we're going to be doing. I tell you what, I've promised Sam not to announce too much tonight because we've got a lot of irons in the pan. Is that the right saying? Pan in the iron? I don't know. There's a saying somewhere along there, and we've got lots of plans, and some of them are coming to fruition quite quickly as well. So that's good news. But I've promised not to steal any thunder. But I'm allowed to mention one thing regarding the website, so we'll come back to that later. Let's get back to Elstonation because that's what the show is tonight. What is Elstonation's view on blood ravens, and why does Elstonation love them? Again, this is from Reaper 28 Graham. There's only one answer to this. They're amazing.
Yeah, well, blood ravens. I've read the omnibus of the blood ravens, so I find them a little bit more interesting than what everyone else thinks. Apparently, from what is said, they're an offshoot chapter of the Thousand Sons, which is generally quite an interesting theory. If you read the omnibus, they find a monastery, and it's like makes reference to a crushed space marine's legs, and they're red, but they're really, 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 really old, and like old mark, and it was like, I know all the blood ravens are mainly psycho based, so kind of like, yeah, and also they meet up with Araman at one of the points, and he's got these guys called the Prodigal Sons. And my friend had an army who was called the Prodigal Sons that were based kind of on the Thousand Sons, and it was all like a big tie up together. So yeah, Blood Ravens are cool.
Blood Ravens are cool. That's the short answer. Derpimus Maximus has got a question for you. Would thinning paints with holy water improve matters across the board, or only with loyalists?
It depends if you're religious or not.
So it's more about the painter than the painted model. That's what we're saying. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's more about the painter.
Well, we all get help where we can from painting, and tonight we're getting help from Elstonation. So we're at the Temple of Elstonation. Right. Okay. Have we got any more questions? Yes, we have. So Stalker 40k. Does Elstonation, and in fact, me too, question for me, prefer painting assembled or part assembled, or paint while on the sprue? You go first, Elstonation.
Part assembled, it does depend on the model. Part assembled, if it's a really finicky one. I tend to also paint tracks on the sprue because they're just easier to deal with. They're all just one sheet instead of like a little bit flying off if you're trying to use an airbrush. And usually a track goes inside a thing, so the side bit where you clipped it off gets covered anyway. Okay. So tracks on the sprue, complicated models, part assembled. Everything else I can kind of deal with as long as it doesn't have a shield. Like shields are the bane of a painter's existence if it covers the majority of the body. It's just like, ugh. So yeah, anything without a shield, I'll paint most of the whole thing altogether.
I think that's a good point, really, because it's all about how much of the model you can actually reach, isn't it? And that's what you have to assess as you go along. You have to kind of have a good look and say, am I going to be able to get, if you put a shield on the model? I think the lizard men, for instance, you look at there, but every single one carrying one of those great big sort of scaly shields. You definitely don't want to stick those shields on before you paint the model. It just obscures so much. You can't even get to the upper leg with them, So more on infantry, it's about what gets obscured, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think there's a thing as well. If I know a lot of people say, well, you can't see it anyway, but if a shield's there, if you're using an airbrush, it will block the airflow as well. So the parts which you can see don't also get an even coverage if you're doing, like, say, for example, angled lighting effects. A shield will block all of that, and then other parts of it will turn out a weird color. So yeah, as you say, you kind of got to assess what you're working on. Majority of the time, so if there's nothing big obscure in it, you can probably do the whole thing in one go.
Yeah. I mean, certainly larger models, I think, sometimes even just part assembled, even if it's not going to obscure anything, just for the sanity of being able to work on it. But I don't know about you. I think with airbrushing as well, sometimes I find that the more you can assemble, the better to a degree. If you want to do sort of zenithal highlighting and things like that, you've got an idea of where the
Yeah, very
shadows
much.
fall in.
It's, I also find as well, if the model's in resin, which is just a common thing which happens with a lot of resin companies, no matter what company are, resin models have gaps in them. So you want to try and fix as many of the join lines as possible, green stuff, before you start getting to painting. So that can become a real bit of a weigh it up of like, can I get away? Like, if I attach this later, is there going to be a massive gaping hole, or is it going to fit pretty seamlessly, and I can get away with that sort of thing? So that's just something you kind of have to drive it when you're assembling it and thinking, well, yeah, I can probably get away with this.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah. Okay, well, cool. I mean, I want to talk a little bit more about you soon,
oh,
because
sure.
we kind of got straight into this, but we'll jump back a little bit. But that's okay. Let's just keep pushing down these questions. I think I've got a couple more, and then we'll have a break
Oh,
from the
okay.
questions, and we'll have a bit of a chat, and then return to them. So,
Sure, sounds
quick
good.
one for Reaper 28, because I did say if people want to put their two penneth in on whether it will. It's a Chaos Marine that is about to kill a Space Marine, and the Guardsman bayonets him in the back and unloads a mag to distract and save the Marine. Would the Guardsman injure the Chaos? I'd say yes. I think it's at least going to give him a bit of a bad burn to his
Yeah.
back, and then obviously, whether it would take him out, you got to get they've got a lot of duplicate organs, Marine, so maybe he's just got to hit him in the spine or somewhere like that, right at somewhere where there isn't more than one of. But
Yeah,
anyway,
I definitely. Yeah, where you hit, I think, is the key part of that
ideally
one.
pick up a plasma pistol that one of the Marines has dropped, and then you haven't got to worry too much about whether the lasgun will do anything.
Yeah, do that.
Okay, we've got a question. Oh, we've got a couple more highs. So Schism20's in there saying hi. Hey Schism, how you doing? Vandus Hammerhand has joined us as well. So we're good. We're doing to say this is an irregular show. Thank you to everyone for joining us. This is brilliant. Furious George gets 3 mentions. You just got one more mention, sir. Question: do you use a wet palette? And this is from 676 Mitch. Do you use a wet palette? And if so, how do you make one? So, Elstonation, do you want
uh,
to start with that?
um, I do sometimes. I don't think a wet palette's always needed. I know a lot of people would argue against that, but I it depends if you're really planning on going to town or something. I'd say for single models, yeah, a wet palette would probably be needed. And if you want to make one, what is it? Kitchen roll, or that was it. Sponge, kitchen roll, then baking greaseproof
Yeah,
paper or
yeah, the
something like that
baking
on top.
paper,
Yeah,
the greaseproof paper, and then yeah. In fact,
yeah.
actually, I'm pretty certain Sam has done a video on making a wet palette on the YouTube channel as well. And there's a few out there, but I know that Sam did one, and it was a really simple, quick and easy, and it just works. And he got some good
Yeah.
feedback as well in the comments. So I think people tried it and it worked for them. So check that out. Right. Okay then. Wow, there's a few things. Oh, that's just people saying thank you for Patrick, and too rightly so. Thank you very much, Patrick. And apparently the saying is irons in the fire. Thank you very much, Big Met Danskill. You're helping my back pain killer addled brain out tonight. Scott Beale. Oh, it's irons in the fire. There's a few. This is. Oh, right. We've got a few Blood Raven conversation now. So Blood Ravens are the
Okay.
reason it took GW so long to process my last order. And there were all sorts of gone. Okay, yeah. A few Blood Raven comments as well about latent psychic powers in them. Right. We've got a question from Vaughan Killian. Oh, that's actually for me. Are the hoodies on the store page the same as the ones you are wearing? And if so, can I get text on the back? The hood is on the store with the red interior. It's the Toon Tone one. Is indeed the same ones that we are wearing. We had a custom bit where we got the name on the front. By default, you've got the logo or the URL of the website logo, which is the full logo, on the back. I think you've got both options. If there's an option you want, though, drop me a message and we can add that artwork up there as well for the hoodies. So if there's something you want, I mean, obviously if it's WGO, I mean, I'm not going to make a hoodie for Elstonation. I love him and everything, but
You do have really cool clothing. Like even when you first came out, you had clothing. We're like, huh?
we love our clothing. Anyway, okay, come on then. So yes, it's on the website. If you want something different, at the moment you can have the WGO logo or the full logo, but give us a shout if you want something different. Right, Derpimus Maximus. Oh wait, no, that's about reboxing and all sorts of stuff. Right, and this is a question now for you. And this is from Reaper28 again. 28 Grim. Do you magnetize models?
Yes, if it's worth it. Dreadnoughts with different arm swap outs and stuff like that. That's usually a good idea. I usually can't be bothered to do the little guys too much because I, more than honestly, will probably lose 90% of the parts and then I'll just feel a bit silly afterwards and glue them on anyway. So, yeah, only if it calls for it that I will want to customize a bit. It's not that often.
I think there's definite a sliding scale of return on investment with magnetizing, isn't it? If you're magnetizing infantry, you're definitely asking for trouble. I think by the time you're down to that scale, you're asking for trouble. I know it's really good, and if it's about, there's a fair point to make here that if you can only afford one box of models and your hobby budget is very, very tight, then a couple of extra pound on magnets to give you the options to play differently is a good idea. Because it allows you to swap them over. I mean, if I go through my Eldar army, the smallest model I've got magnetized is the jet bikes, so I can swap over the Shuriken cannon.
You see,
and
now
the
that
scout
makes
laser.
sense to me as well, because a different gun on the bottom, because they're not exactly small, those guns
No.
for model wise, which would make sense to me. But yeah, to magnetize whether he's holding this rifle or this rifle, I've done it, and at the end I ended up just gluing the guns in place, and I was like, I'll just get another model if I'm going to do this. So yeah, as you say, return on investment versus time and effort.
Okay, one last question, and then we've
Hmm.
caught up with the chat because a lot of the chat went off to
Oh,
talk
cool.
about Blood Ravens and Magnus. You started something going off here. Hashtag Magnus did nothing wrong. Magnus!
Yeah, I got
I haven't
Magnus.
shouted Magnus on the chat for ages. Right, okay, so this is for you, Elston. What
Hmm.
is your preferred paint line, if any?
Oh, that's an interesting question. There, it's rather tricky because each one does its own thing. Like, scale 75 is amazing for blending, because the matte colors don't create such a harsh separation from each other. Vallejo has such a wide paint range that it's just a good all-rounder. But I'm tending to find that Games Workshop have got some really interesting colors that the other two do not cover as well. So there's a weird holy trinity of those three, which
Yeah.
I I'm really not sure on. I'd probably say Vallejo, but Games Workshop and Scale 75 are really strong contenders against them both. So
Mm.
I wouldn't say I'd want to get rid of any of them. They've all got their own like um, qualities, which I would strongly miss if I didn't have them. So there are some other paint ranges which Monty has told me about, which I've got to try at some point. But those three, I would say, yeah, they're all good.
Yeah,
All good.
I think that's the thing. You're quite right. Sometimes it's not about the make of the paint; it's about the color and the consistency of individual paints, isn't it? For
Mm,
instance, I find Minotaur, which is the Badger brand of airbrushing, I
mm,
find their whites, greys, and blacks just absolutely off the scale in terms of airbrush
yeah.
paints. They're a really difficult set of colours, especially white, and Minotaur have just nailed it. But the Vallejo, the metallics that I reviewed for Vallejo, just mind blowing. Best metallics out there for again airbrushing sort of thing. Some of the Forge World metallics for airbrushing, absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
Forge World
There,
Yellow, the yellow for the airbrush. Oh man, what? How the hell have they done that? That's incredible. That's an incredible paint. So I think it's one of those things. I know that when Sam does the painting tutorials as well, and I'm sure you do this. You're jumping from one brand to the other, aren't you? And there's a reason
yeah,
for that. It's
yeah. I mean, I try to, if I can, on painting tutorial, try and keep it to one brand if I'm going to do it. But
right.
sometimes you can't. One
Yeah.
of the brands just doesn't have what you're after, so you got to kind of switch. So, like Vallejo, pretty good for their varnishes. However, I have to say the Minotaur primers are amazing. I only just found them recently, and they are.
Oh, yeah.
extraordinary.
Yeah. The is it
New favorite
styrenes or
primer.
something like that, or
Yeah, it's Steinal
steinlarines?
Res or yeah,
Steinlarez or
I don't
something
know.
like that. I should find out
Yeah.
how to actually pronounce that word, but they
Yeah,
are
they don't need
amazing.
thinning at all. It goes
No.
straight through the airbrush.
I,
I've
I've
fallen in
fallen in
love
love
with
with
it.
the grey. I don't know about you, but the
Mm,
grey is just amazing. I just love it.
yeah, yeah, it's not as harsh as the Vallejo's got a grey primer. It's really quite close to white.
Right, okay.
So but the grey from Minotaur is a really nice kind of subtle blend into the black, which means if you want to go lighter with it, you can do, which is really nice.
Mm. Wow. Well, I tell you what, I've got a little mark where we are. So we've got a
Cool.
couple more questions coming in, which is brilliant. We'll return to questions, but we're at 9:20 now. So maybe we should get back to the introduction I was meant to do right at the start. So, as I said, I've always been blown away by the pace of your output. Every time your Facebook page stuff is just kicking off constantly. There's always great stuff going off there. Um, the more recent one was, say, the Forge World Dreadmaw, which
Yeah, that
got
got a bit of
featured.
attention, didn't it? That was
Yeah,
quite. I was a little bit shocked by
let me see
how
if I can
well
bring this up.
received that
So.
one went.
I'm not shocked at all by this. I mean, I've just got it up on screen, one of the side shots now, and I'm not shocked at all by the way. Just a quick plug. So this is Elstonation's Minis, which is your Facebook community group, isn't it? So
Yeah.
come on, pop along and put some comments on this stuff as well while we're here, because this is amazing stuff. But yeah, I absolutely love this. So and I know you've done a video for this as well, haven't you?
Yeah. There's a video tutorial shows how it's painted start to finish. So.
Right. Okay, then that's cool. So I tell you what, let's start with, because this is the one for me that was got me to sit up in my chair again and just go, oh man, that is beautiful. There's something about how matte the paint is. It's got a real dry lizard feel to it.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk us through, just in principle, what went off there? How did you get there?
Well, it, it's a very odd thing to think of with all I find all the best stuff in miniature painting that people tend to attract to is derives from real life. When I did a while back, I created up a way to do lightning for my Night Lords, and it was derived from real life lightning and the effects that real life lightning would do. So this was kind of a similar effect. So I got the model back at the open day back in August, and I've been holding on to it for a while because I really wanted to do something for it. And it so happened me and my missus went to a place called Cotswold Wildlife Park, which is basically a zoo
Yeah.
um, in our sort of local area, and I primed the Dreadmore, and I was just thinking, what am I going to do with this? And I was like, well, let's go have a look at some snakes. And so I had a look at all the snakes, and they all happened to be all the colourful ones, which was generally like, I'm not painting this a luminous green, or the or the scary anacondas that I saw in the tank, which was just something like 15 foot long and arms. Sorry, their bodies are the size of my torso as well. Yeah, so I wasn't going to do that. So I came home and had a look at pythons and boa constrictors, all stuff on YouTube. So if I can give any advice to anyone who wants to paint something and really wants to go to town on it, just do some research, look at stuff that's already there in real life, and it will give you so much inspiration for stuff. But the idea is I was trying to create this effect that it looked like there were scales there, and I had the scale stencil from Fallout Hobbies,
Okay.
and I great company. I supported them with Kickstarter days. They do custom decals as well. So if you ever want some decals made for you, they can create them as well, which is really cool. But yeah, I got these stencils from them, and I wanted to create the effect, but with snakes, the white part of it, which is the most eye-catching part of it, which is so small, which you don't focus on in this. The little white parts in between the scales is what draws you, and I needed to keep them in there somehow. So I basically just shifted the stencil along. So I did one color, and then put the stencil back on, sort of just overlapping it. And then
Right.
at that
Okay.
point, it is basically a light brown and then a dark brown on top of it, just kind of overlapped from each other, and it covered enough of it to then make the white bits look very sparse and then give the actual impression of when you see a snake bend, if you
Yeah,
look at it, you'll see white parts show up between the scales when
as the
it's moving.
scales space out. Yeah.
Exactly. So that is basically the key to that whole model. It's just that tiny little bit of spacing, the fact that scales move when a snake bends. And the trick worked. It I didn't know if it was going to work, but I tried it. And again, I can't really say anything more about painting than just try it. At the end of the day, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But you tried it and you tried something. So if you're ever going to want to achieve something, just try different things. Try as much as you can, and you will become a better painter just from that thought process alone in your head.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things, isn't it? One of the things with painting is I just think it's good to measure yourself against yourself. So just
Yes.
compare your latest model against your last model, and that's always a good way of. And every now and then pick up one of your really early models and just remind yourself where you've come. But I think that's a good thing to do.
Yeah, very much so. And I kind of been in. I come out of painting a lot of sci-fi and doing a lot of commission work at the time. So I've been painting a lot of armies, and this is kind of the byproduct of painting armies all the time. Is you are so tired of painting mass amounts of troops that you'll just, when you get one model to focus all of your attention on, you can just pull out some incredible stuff. Because all your energy, you haven't got the mindset of I've got to deal with this mountain of work. You've got this one model, and all of your energy and focus can go onto, which is just the most incredible feeling. And then after that's done, you go back to painting mountains and mountains with everyone else's work. So
So one last question on this before we move on, and I really want to.
yeah,
This is the first half of the show. I think the second half of the show, I really want to get into hints and tips for people out there. So,
sure. Okay,
but
sure, no
I just
problem.
wanted to, let's have a look at some of your beautiful work. How long did this take you then, from primer to
Uh,
finished?
Primer to finish. The basing actually took a little while because there's various different layers. I would say I started it on the Saturday and I finished it on the Sunday morning. I would say probably about hours, maybe 8 hours, maybe less.
Wow.
It wasn't it didn't take as long as I thought it was going to. It
Hmm.
was a lot quicker than I thought. Obviously the tutorial videos like sped up and cut and all kinds of stuff, so that's condensed into like 30 minutes. But yeah, I'd say about 8 hours. And I, if I could make everything dry instantly, it would have gone a lot quicker. But yeah, there's a certain amount of drying time where you have to leave things alone for a bit and go back to real life for a little while.
Yeah, I get that. Right, okay, let's have a little catch up on the chat. Oh, I've swapped us around. Hold on a second. There we are. I'm back in my bubble now. You almost ended up in the bubble there, Elstonation. The bubble's my bubble, all right? Okay, let's catch up on some of the comments. So this is from Ralph Hummel. Ralph says, any brushes you prefer? So what is your preferred brush?
Oh, dry brushing anything you can get your hands on, to be honest, that's old. It doesn't really matter too much about dry brushing. If you want detail work, say I can't say anything more highly than Winsor and Newton brushes. The To be fair, the GW Artificer layer brush
Mm.
is really good as well. I did hear a sneak peek that this was made by Winsor and Newton. I don't know that for a fact, but Winsor and Newton brushes. If you can get there's like a 4-pack set. I think
Series
it's
7.
about 40. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
Series 7. I think
yeah.
there's a 4-pack set. I think it's about 30, 40 quid. And that'll get you all you need for all your detail work.
You know what? Sam always blows my mind because Sam has graduated away from he does love the artificer brush, but he's the
Yeah.
amount he does with a standard medium brush because his point is it's all about the tip. you know. But if you
Yeah.
watch any of his tutorials, there's this brush that's like 1/4 inch across, but it's got the most fine tip you'll ever see. And of course, the beauty is
Yeah.
he's thinned his paints down, and the
Hmm.
bristles just act as an endless reservoir of paint. He hardly ever has to go back to the palette, and he's just dropping, and it's like wow.
I'd
So
say actually, I just thought as well, broken toe brushes, they're brilliant for holding a lot of paint on them as well.
right,
So if you get a
okay.
chance, they're really good and a lot cheaper than Winsor Newton.
Yeah, okay. I think Sam's done a
So
review of Broken Toad as well, if I remember rightly. They're good
mm,
brushes. Yeah, they are good brushes.
y-
Right.
yeah, go
We've
for it. Go for it. What
we've
else we
got
got?
another question then. So yeah, is the same primer as UMP is the same primer as Badger. There you go. So if you want an alternative there,
Okay.
Ryan Benfield is coming in and saying hi. Just finished doing some converting, or at least 9 minutes ago he'd just finished doing some converting. Thanks for joining us. Roa's got a question for you. Any recommendations for a first airbrush?
Oh, this could get onto another topic, but we'll condense it down into a quick one. I would probably advise getting a cheap Chinese one just to start you off. You will break it. You will wreck it and you will break it. But once you've wrecked it and you've broken it, you know what you did wrong. After that point, maybe Badger Patriot 105. They
Yeah.
are complete workhorses. They can do quite detailed work. They can do quite large work. They're an all-round workhorse. So if you want to skip the China one, go straight to that. That's fine. But it's on your own head if you break it, and then you got to pay for replacement parts. So
It's replacement parts at the end of the day. You're never going to break it where it's unusable unless you do something
yeah,
absolutely catastrophic like slam it in a door or something. But
yeah.
you're right, it's an absolute workhorse of a brush, isn't it? I've only just
Mm.
recently got one and it's become my most used brush now. It's just
Yeah,
the
they are
amount of
just
stuff I do with it.
they're like, I mean, there's a Sotar 2020 for like super fine work, but I tend to find it's not that flexible. It is just very, it does very small work, and you can't do anything else with it. It just doesn't work that way.
It is an incredibly fine brush. I know
Hmm.
Steve over at Barwell Bodyworks is. I think that's his workhorse brush more or less. I think he does a
Oh,
lot with
really?
it. So yeah, he really does.
Oh,
But
okay.
then again, that guy's some kind of airbrushing wizard, isn't he? So he can
Yeah.
just he could paint a garage door with one, I think, or
Yeah.
something. But you're right. The Sotar 2020, I love it for detail, but oh, you got to be careful with it. It's certainly not a
Hmm.
beginner's brush by any means.
No, no, yeah, okay.
Oh, right. Okay, then. Let's see where we're at with the chat. So, we've got a couple of people saying, Robbie Cohen says, all right, sold, just subscribed to your channel, Elstonation. And
Oh, thank you very much.
Reaper 28 has subscribed as well. And then Akaria comes in, brand loyal, and says, don't forget to subscribe to us.
Well done, Ikaria. Well done.
Derfimus Maximus says, not so long ago, I stripped a few really old models, watching the paint slide off the face like someone from Mission Impossible removing a mask, or like opening the Ark of the Covenant was disturbing. Oh dear, right, okay then. So there's a bit of Finya Paint shouted up, and then for every like this chat receives, one of Elstonation's clones gets the evening off. So please like and subscribe. There you go. Let's talk a little bit then. So
Right.
yes, I think I've explained the clones, haven't I? It's just I started to
Yeah.
suspect there was definitely more than one person when it came to Elstonation. I'm not going to let you take this into a conversation around you, Chuck Norris. So let's start with volume then. So what do you think's the
Right.
secret to your pace, the amount you put out at the moment?
I don't sleep much. um, the the what it seems like it is a bit of an illusion of what everyone kind of conceives of. Well, I say it. To me, it seems like an illusion because to me, I spend a couple of weeks working on something and then it appears, and everyone's like, "How have you done that so fast?" I'm like, "I've spent a couple of weeks on this." However, I appreciate not everyone works at the same pace, so maybe I should explain how that happens. So, I'll give you kind of rundown of my day-to-day sort of routine. Is I tend to wake up about 5 o'clock in the morning. I don't start work till half eight. So I, by choice of my dog now getting into the routine of getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning, now wakes me up at 5 o'clock in the morning, whether I want to or not. So, and I have a terrible habit if I wake up, I really have a hard time going back to sleep. So I tend to get up and start painting. I can't do any airbrushing because my airbrush is my hobby room is next to my bedroom. So my missus would really not be happy if she started hearing motors going off and stuff like that. So I tend to try and get all airbrushing work done in the evenings or weekends when there's no worry of noise, sorry. And then in the morning, I tend to do washes, dry brushing, detailing work, whatever I can for probably a couple hours, walk the dog, then go to work. Then go to work, come home, do your usual stuff, and then try and get a couple hours in the evening. So the secret being is I paint close to 4 hours every single day. And I know a lot of people can't commit to that sort of time frame and stuff like that. So that's the only reason why it seems, well, I produce quite a lot, is I spend a lot of time on it. And
Yeah.
that I wish there was a secret technique I could tell you all to go do this and it goes really fast. It's not that case at all. I'm just awake a lot more than everyone else.
So no secret clones. It's just literally you put
No,
the hours in. Yeah, that's what you're saying.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think that's the thing
That's
is
it.
that
Is and
regularity
thousands.
regularity is one thing.
Sorry, go ahead.
If you can get down and keep it regular and keep the momentum, that's a big deal, isn't it? You'll see that output increase. So I think next.
Yeah, and there's a certain.
Sorry, go on.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, you go,
I was
please.
just going to say there's a certain amount of everyone bigging you up and go, oh, you're amazing, you can do all this stuff. That you start getting into your own head that you can do all this stuff, so you start pushing yourself a little bit more. You're like, so you're like, I can do this. I really can't paint 1,000 minis, and you kind of look at yourself and like, oh, I need to sleep now. So, yeah, yeah,
Well,
yeah. I wish there was more of a secret.
so probably the next question and related to the first answer, really. So you paint 4 hours a
Mm.
day. How do you keep getting back to the desk? What keeps you motivated?
Um, there's a weird mindset, and you might appreciate this as well. So hopefully some of the viewers do as well. I I work in a corporate business myself, so I look at how to be more efficient in my time scope and stuff like that. And I have done as I've grown and become an adult in my life. As much as I don't want to be an adult, I've become one. Uh, um, so as you get older, you look at ways of being more efficient about doing stuff, and corporate business kind of pushes that upon you. They always want more productivity, and that's just the way it is. So you look at how you're doing your job. So stuff like the Dreadmore is kind of cancelled out from that because that's just like this is just art. This is just what I want to do. When you're looking at a batch paint or army paint, you kind of have to break it down into right. So, where is my time going to be most effective? So, for example, I've got the entire army out, nothing's primed. So, first step is I've got to get everything primed. So, everything's got to go the base color, black or grey or whatever color you're going to do it. And then you have to look and say, well, okay, well, is everything going to have a top-down grey spray, which is kind of the technique I tend to use a lot these days of doing a zenith like highlight on them.
Mm,
Um, and majority of the time that's true. But for example, if you're doing something with metallics, there's no point in doing that because the metallic paint will cover over the grey. So there's absolutely no point in doing that. So then you have to go, right, okay, metallic ones stick out to the side, grey ones over here, grey ones get this. Their
yeah.
metallic ones, they get their metallic bits. And you have to start segregating it, section it off. The key, I think, to getting large amounts of work done like this is just work backwards and forwards. A bit like Mr. Miyagi, wax on, wax off. You wax on, so you do all one side, you move like the way my process works, I work from left to right and back again. So everything's on the left hand side, and I do a color, and everything moves over to that side. Once all the colors are done on that side, I get another color, and then everything moves back over to that side as I do it. So my desk just goes like that from one side to the other until they're done. So that's the mentality my brain works on, like a systematic approach to painting. So uh, it's very much I would strongly recommend getting audiobooks or some music or podcasts or something to listen to. Otherwise, if you sit in silence, you do tend to go a bit crazy. So I've done it a few times. It's really not good for your own state of mind to put on something where someone else can talk to you. And hence, this is why I don't do videos that much at the moment, because I have so many armies that I have to paint. I
Yeah,
don't get the opportunity to
yeah.
film so much. So that's just life.
Fair enough. I like the idea of kind of moving the models from one zone to the next so you can see your progression. There's nothing like kind of knowing where you're at, isn't it? So 10 models on your left, and as you work through them, that pile on the right builds up. Then you go on to
Mm-hmm.
the next bit and keep shoving them back. And it's little things like that that just keep you going, doesn't it? That kind of,
Yeah,
you feel like you're getting somewhere. There's motion on the desk. You know, it's not just an endless mess where you're working away. It's a good idea.
yeah, exactly. If you get to that point where you're like, I've only got 5 more models left to do, you kind of, your brain will just go, right, let's just do this and get it done. And or if it gets to 10 models, you're like, that's fine. What you've got not got to do is count the amount of models you've got once you've just started that run. And you're like, I've still got 50 models to paint. Don't count at that point. That's the wrong time to count. Count when you're getting towards the end, and then you kind of
Yeah.
spurs yourself on a little bit. So
Yeah, only count down when you're close to the end. That's the way to go, isn't it? You know,
yes,
I've,
yeah,
I mean, I
yeah.
used to do quite a lot of cycling, and I always remember if you're doing anything above 100 miles on the bike, you always counted up to 50, and then you counted down from 50, but you never
Yeah,
counted down from 100. You know, it's just
yeah,
it made the first
just
50 miles feel absolutely terrible.
yeah.
Right. Okay, then. We've got a question from Ralph Hummel here as well. There's a few comments, by the way, so please, because we're moving through questions, I'm not ignoring people, but there are a few questions in here for it, or at least stuff like the Alt Boys saying, loves the Iwata Eclipse. Yes, there are other brushes available, so
Yeah,
that's cool. So
yes.
everybody check out the chat as well, because there's a whole bunch of brilliant people on the chat, and they're all full of great advice as well, so do check
Mm.
out the chat. But for now, we'll focus on the question. So, Ralph Hummel, what do you use to thin your paints for airbrushing? What do you use to thin paints for airbrushing?
Ooh. That's this is a bit of contention here because I don't have that many other thinners. I mainly use Vallejo thinners. However, I have noticed if you use a thinner from a different brand on the paints, it doesn't work as well. So I'm looking into getting some more thinners. I tend to use Vallejo, mainly because I mainly use more Vallejo paints, and it does work on GW stuff to a degree. It doesn't work so well with scale 75.
Yeah.
So I'll need to invest in some scale 75 things to get that working right.
I think you've absolutely hit the nail on the head, and this is the problem, and it's one of the things that makes airbrushing to a degree difficult to get into when you're first
Mhm.
starting. Um, for instance, I'm a massive fan of the Tamiya X20, you know, the
Yes.
acrylic
Yeah.
thinner, and it's
Yeah.
brilliant. It's not a million miles away from isopropanol. It's definitely
Yeah.
got something else in it. It's got some form of flow aid. It's like isopropanol plus flow aid.
Yeah.
I like the alcohol-based thinners because what they enable you to do is to get the pigment through the nozzle. They space the pigment out of the paint, get it through the nozzle, which is what you're trying to do. That's why you're thinning the paint. And then as soon as isopropanol leaves the brush, it evaporates. So the only thing
Yeah.
actually hitting your model is
It's
the pigment itself
pink.
spaced
Yeah.
out. Yeah, it's a little bit wet, but the airflow of the airbrush immediately dries the kind of thinner. But there's a point to mention: alcohol-based thinners don't play happily with all types of paint, and it can almost
Mm.
act like an emulsifier. It congeals with some paints, and it makes a
Yeah.
horrible mess in your airbrush. So you've really got to tread carefully.
Yeah, I've seen some as well eat through the paint after it's gone onto the model and dried. It's like
Oh,
after time, I learned that with the Thousand Suns back in the day that I put it on and I put on another layer of something else and it's just started eating into it and I've
oh
started seeing the other
no!
layer come back through it. You're like,
Oh
ah,
no!
so yeah, yeah, watch out for that trick. That happens sometimes.
So
So,
I think you're quite right to say essentially when you're starting out, certainly play it safe and use the thinners that come with a range. So if you're pushing a Vallejo through
mm,
the brush, get the Vallejo thinner. I know the Forge World thinner again is a bit like the X20.
Yeah.
It's again, it's another sort of alcohol-based, spirit-based one, isn't it? And that very much smells like isopropanol, which is just 99.7% alcohol, basically.
Yeah.
Really good for keeping you warm at night, but not necessarily good for every brand of paint. Sometimes, as crazy as it sounds, sometimes I will just use a little bit of water. If you're not doing a huge thin, sometimes just 1 or 2 drops of water, but just bear in mind you're going to slow the dry times down, so you've got to be really careful the pace you're putting it through the brush then, you know.
Yeah.
Right, what else have we got? So we've got a few things. Well, Robbie Cohen says I use Flow Improver to use to reduce dry tips. So yeah, exactly. A lot of the
Yeah.
Rangers will have a Flow Improver. Does Vallejo, by the way? I'm not.
Uh, I'm sure they do.
I think they do, don't they?
I don't tend to use it myself because I tend to use the thinner to actually get
Yeah.
it broken down to the point where I need it. But I'm sure I've seen Flow Aid somewhere on their range because
Minotaur.
they got
Minotaur has a drying retarder, and that's a bit like the Flow Improver, but it also keeps the paint wet. So if you're trying to do a blended sort of vignette effect, you know, a gradient effect, that can
yeah
work really well. It can work really well, but it takes a bit of practice. Good fun though.
yeah
Right, okay then. What else have we got in? 676 Mitch says basically Elstonation has managed to harness the power of the warp, and somehow where time goes really slow for him, but in actuality it's really quick for us. Heretic. And as soon as he said heretic, that just kicked off a whole bunch of purge the heretic, purge the standard brushes. It's all about the artificer coming from 676 Mitch. The purge took over for a while. I love it when the chat
yeah.
just goes off on its own for a while.
Awesome. Yeah, I might be warp spawn, but yeah, I'm gonna run with it while I can.
Johnny Rockstar's got a great comment here. He's sort of All by Myself by Celine Dion on a 4-hour loop to paint to.
That would be head smacking. No.
Okay, so well, here's a good one from Icaria actually. So when you start a project, be it assembly or painting, do you write out a plan of action step by step?
No.
No.
No, I don't. No, I assess what I've got, and then I have a little bit of a think. I kind of you ever done that where you just sit and stare at your models for a bit, and you're like, hmm. And sometimes they can be fully painted, or sometimes they're just looking at stuff that's not painted, and you sit there with the like. Most people will look and go, "Oh, I don't want to paint all of this." But my brain's working out, going, so what do I need to do first? And to be honest with you, this is going to sound really horrendous, and most people will never want to use me as a commission paint ever. But I kind of just go, oh, let's just try this then and see what happens. And yeah, that's kind of what happens. And yeah, but yeah,
Well,
obviously when it comes to commission painting, that's a bit weird because you're sort of stuck to a rule or a description that someone wants. But to a degree, yeah, no, let's try this. Let's see how that works.
I think I'm witness to a little bit of that. So maybe it's a good time to talk about my Gene Stealer cult. So this is something.
Yeah,
This is something that happened recently. I mentioned on one of my chats, or I know it was a Facebook post, wasn't it, Elston?
yeah,
And I basically said, ugh, I've managed a bit of progress, but it's taken me all I can kind of sit for about an hour, and that is really debilitating at the moment in terms of if I sit for an hour, by the time I get to the end of that hour, I've got to spend about 25, 30 minutes kind of walking around the house doing stretching. So, you know, I don't want to go on about my bike, but it's limiting the amount of time I can spend in the seat. And I was kind of depressed because I was going, oh, I've got to get these Gene Stealer done for the channel. And you, like a wonderful person, said, I'll help you out with them. And I initially said, no, it's a personal project. My armies are always quite personal to me, but I really appreciate the offer. And then I was kind of musing over it, you know, in preparation for a Monday Muse maybe, but I was musing over it and I thought, you know what? Sam does a lot of tutorials on infantry models anyway, so he covers a lot of that, which is cool. I tend to do airbrushing vehicles and stuff like that, and I could still focus as well on character models. So if I do vehicles, of which I've got 4 Goliaths, 1 Chimera, 2 Sentinels, so there's still a bunch of work to be done for that. A Valkyrie, and
I was
and
going to say, there's still a fair amount of work there.
yeah, there's still a fair amount of work.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, there were 70 infantry, I think was the count, wasn't it? So I got back to you and
Yeah.
said, okay, do you think you could help me out with 70 infantry?
Yeah. I always love when you get those messages. You're like, that's a lot of stuff to do. Right, let's give it a go then.
So let's have a
Yeah.
look at this. You've actually put a post up, and I said I think I was a little bit of a witness to your one of us. What happens if I do this? So I'm just going to bring up. At the
Yeah.
moment, we've got a picture of them all on the desk, and I don't know whether that's even
Okay.
all of them. By the way, what do you think to the
That
Gene Stealer in the barrel?
it is awesome. I love it. I kind of appreciated it, and I didn't want to. I kind of like the texture, the pre-shades done on it just from the grey, and I'm like, I don't really want to change that grey. I already like that grey, but at the same time, yeah, we'll see. We'll see what the rest of it comes out like. That that
So
is a
that
very good use of not having legs.
yeah,
So
well, I know it started off as a joke. I was one model short of a unit, but I had a torso, but no legs. And I just thought, gene stealers, they just pop out. So if you notice, he's got rending claws, and he's used it like a can opener to just pop out of the can and kind of
I do. Yeah,
like
I
some
like.
kind of crazy cookie monster or something.
Yeah.
But needless to say, here we're looking at a hell of a lot of gene stealers. So let's talk through on this first few images. So once you
And this,
opened the box and realised how I'd shortchanged you, where did you go from there?
so to be honest with you, it was because the one of the things I do, and is just so people are aware of how I commission paint. A lot of the time, I tell my clients, I like, what's the deadline for this sort of thing, and most of the time, this is before we've even agreed to do it. I turn around to them and say, I'm not going to give you a deadline because I'm just going to get this done when I get it done, and you'll have to
Yeah,
deal with it if you like it. If you don't like it, there are other people, so that's the way it works. With this one, it was like, yeah, I kind of got a deadline. I was like, right, okay, so we better crack on. To be honest with you, it was just getting them out, and I was like, right, let's get these sprayed black, let's get these sprayed grey, and it was the trick was to get them all pre-shaded to the point where I could see the detail in them, and then they're like, right, okay, how am I going to achieve the next steps? So, which is kind of where the first hacks come in on this one. So I don't know if, well, actually, if you look at the big picture, that's actually the left to right process in play there.
oh, hold on,
So
let me
you,
get back to that then. So this is the wide
this is,
picture is your left to
yeah.
right process, is it? Okay.
Yeah, so you could probably see about maybe like 2/3 into the right. There's a bit of a gap, and then
Yep.
all the guys to the right are darker. This is actually the left to right process in play here.
Right.
So
Okay.
all the guys, all the guys on the left have had an additional dry brush on top of them. So this, we were speaking about this just before we went live as well, because I wanted to get the white ish start. It was kind of like an off-white color that they had for all their sort of carapace armor. And initially, I thought I was going to airbrush it, wash it, and then dry brush it again. I was like, yeah, that's quite a lot of work for the deadline. It wouldn't really suit. So I tried a dry brush with, was this Longbeard Grey? Never really tried it before, but I was like, that's an off-white.
Is that
Tried
is
that
that
on
a
it.
Citadel paint Longbeard grey?
Yeah, yeah, it's the dry one.
It's one of the dry
So it was,
ranges, right? Okay,
yeah, yeah.
cool.
So it was literally, I picked up and I was like, that might actually be perfect. So tried it, dry brushed it, sent you the picture. You seemed happy. So I was like,
Yeah,
right,
I am
let's see.
happy. And I think it's one of those things. I rarely go for dry brushes as
Yeah,
a painter, if you know what I mean. It's one of those things, and
yeah.
you've kind of opened my eyes to it because these guys are meant to be miners. That's my whole that's
Mm.
my whole thing about my Gene Stealer cult. They're a mining organization. Their equipment's going to be battered. It's going to look rough. The paint needs to look rough. I'd have never thought. I know it sounds crazy. I'd have never thought to hit them with airbrush. And as soon as I saw it, I was like, actually, that's the look I'm looking for. That's the that kind of like these rough and tumble guys who have just shambled out from half a mile underneath the ground and they're crawling up all over the city, you know. So for me, it was a perfect look. And it's a quick
Yeah,
win for you as well because it's a quick method, you know.
yeah, it's actually done a double thing as well, which a bit of a happy accident, if anything, because obviously dry brushing is not a neat affair. If you're going to do it, it's not. It's very hard to control it into a confined space. So obviously, I ended up dry brushing a lot of the rest of the model. Now, with typically working with oranges and yellows, they're not that opaque. So what is working really well, and I've done a bit of a test one with the orange guy, is just put an orange on it, and it's actually creating highlights for the orange
Yeah.
and doing a lot of extra work for me because I don't have to necessarily go through highlighting it as much. I mean, possibly do another layer on it, but yeah, it's done an extra bit of highlighting for me, which again, another hack which I don't worry about so much because it's done some of the work for me. So yeah, another thing, if you can find little hacks when you're painting this amount of stuff, do it. Why not? It gets the work because a majority of the time, at the end of the day, someone's not. If you've got 70 guys, they're not going to pick up every single model and look for like a miraculous paint job on every single model.
Yeah.
That's not the way mass armies work. They are toned down just a smidgen in comparison to the characters, just because you don't want them stealing the limelight.
Yeah, I think there are
Yeah.
people out there that do absolutely, you know, award-winning units and award-winning armies, you know, in terms of every single model is a work of art, but you've got to commit very heavily to those, and that's a personal project. And these are very much, again, for me, this is infantry. Like I said, I've retained the character models, so I'm going to call it our army, Elston, because
Ah,
I think these are
our
our
army.
these are our Jeep Steelers now. So this is a collaboration piece. So
Ah,
I got to work
yeah,
on the characters, and you know I can spend a bit of time, and the characters will keep themselves a little bit cleaner because they're not down at the rock face. So it even works
yeah,
from a narrative point of view, doesn't it? You know, their equipment's going to
yeah,
be that little bit more, you know, because the uh, patriarch and the magus and stuff like that, they or magus, they're
yeah.
not going to get into a bit of a mess. So and the primus as well, whilst he has more or less the same armor, chances are he's not been down at the rock face for a long time. So I think it works
Yeah,
perfectly.
and I'm not doing the bases for these either. So this is, yeah, it's effectively our army because I'm not doing that part of it. That's
Well,
your part of the
that
deal.
was the thing I
So
thought would help as well unify the army because obviously, you
yeah,
know, you're a good distance away and you were acting very quickly for me. So I hadn't even got a test model done so you could follow it. Essentially, you're doing the test model and then I'm going to follow your scheme. It's kind of going in reverse. And I did think if there's a little bit of variance, we can tie the two parts of the paint job back together by if I do the bases it's at
yes,
least then it's a big part of tying a model
yeah,
range together, isn't it?
yeah. It's surprising how much the base impacts the because I know Games Day and Golden Demons used to say the base doesn't matter. It's all about the model, and it was like everyone went, yeah, right. We all know it matters.
Yeah.
Everyone knows the base matters. So yeah, and then they kind of stopped saying that now, and they're just like, okay, yeah, it does matter. So
Well, we're into the last 3 minutes of the chat, so if anybody
okay,
wants any more quick tips, then they need to fire the questions away now. But I'm
really
going to
quickly.
just quickly jump back into the chat now and see if I can spot them. There's a few people that have used the tag. Right, here we go. So this is this is from Icaria. Do you have a recipe book for your paint mixers, washers and techniques, etc.? So do you keep a note of favorite combos?
um, only in my head, I kind of know what works. Like if you're gonna do golds, highlight with silvers, and then wash back with something like Agrax Earthshade to give you a kind of a nice highlight and contrasting gold color. Silvers, I tend to find using whites mixed in with the silvers is the way to go with that. Um, I like to change everything up as much as I can. Like if I'm doing orcs from one range, I like to try and make them a different color from another range. And a lot of the time I just like experimenting with different colors. There's hacks which I know where washes work, but I wouldn't necessarily say there's no library of what I know works and doesn't work sort of
Yeah.
thing. So there's stuff you can try and just keep trying.
Cool. We've got another question from Akaria. So people seem to use the X20A thinner from Tamiya, but not the paints for the hobby. Why? I mean, I've got an answer for this, but do you have an opinion on this?
There are a different kind of paint. They work. They're quite aggressive.
Yeah,
I think it was Tamiya which I was talking about, where they eat into other paints. So
yeah,
you need to watch out when you're using them because they will. If it's not sealed properly, they could end up wrecking the rest of your paint jobs. Or
yeah.
when you try and put something over them, that won't work.
Yeah, I mean, the Tamiyas are like we talked about the Badger Primer, which is a
Mhm.
polyurethane acrylic. It's acrylic, but with polyurethane paint suspended in it, rather than the propellants that you get inside the primer can. And the Tamiya paint range is basically that. I think it's polyurethane acrylic or enamel acrylic, and either
Yeah,
way, it's that weird combination of two different types of paint, which is why the X20 has that spirit base to spread it out. So they're beautiful for remote control cars. They're really tough because they're like a car paint when
yeah,
they set. That polyurethane sort of when it sets, it's like a rock iron skin, you know. So it's
yeah,
really good and it flexes. But like you said, they're a bit heavy duty for a small model, aren't they? They're just
yeah.
obscure detail, and it can go a bit crazy with them.
Mm.
All aboard the Purge train from Reaper. I've just started. Just even reading that out has probably got a few more Purge comments. Akaria. So this is Akaria again. When painting Space Marines, bolters on or bolters off?
Bolters off. Bolters
Every
off.
time. Every
Just,
time.
just makes life easier. Put them on afterwards. Just makes life easier.
Johnny Rockstar says Tamiya paints stink. That's the main reason I don't use them. I think
Yeah.
he means the smell, which is of course is that polyurethane enamel smell thing that's going off. I think if you Google it, you'll find the actual paint mixture of them, but they are indeed a completely different paint. Can we
Yeah.
call the patriarch Mr. Snufflegouse? Mr. Snufflegus? I think so. Well, why not? Why not? Is that the Snufflegruff from DR and Quinch? But I think it might be something different. So I'm afraid I don't understand the reference there, unless you're referring to the Scuss. Do you know DR and Quinch? Do you remember a graphic novel from a long time ago? Probably before your time, Elston.
Yeah, sadly before my time on that one.
Patrick says he needs to go to bed. So thanks for the show, Phil and
Oh,
Elston. So, well, thank you for joining us.
right.
And thank you again for the donation, sir. We'll put it to
Yeah.
good cause. We'll put it to good
Awesome
cause.
fans. Awesome fans.
Right, Elmo. There's a lot of Elmo comments. I think that's to do with my dude in the can. Elmo took over the chat for a bit. Akari is plugging your Facebook page, and don't forget you've
I
also got
see.
a YouTube channel as well. But I'm sure they
Yeah,
can find
yeah,
the link to that on Facebook. Is that right? But if not, is it
yeah.
just Elstonation?
Yeah. It's just Elstonation. There'll be links on my Facebook page somewhere for some of my videos.
Oh my god.
Yeah, if not, type it in or type Cheddar More Gamers in. You'll probably find me in Spud rocking around somewhere. So,
If
yeah, you'll find this pretty easy.
In fact, Akaria, being the amazing Akaria that he is, he's already actually told people they can find you on YouTube and they can like and subscribe. So he's doing the
Yeah,
wonderful social job that is Akaria. He's really top
yeah.
bloke out there. So
Again, you got some amazing fans, and it's really awesome to see because we saw you guys from the beginning. It's really nice to see you've got so many dedicated people following you now. So it's quite heartwarming to see that it's grown and it's carrying on growing as well. So
well, we
yeah,
keep trying, but it's thanks to lovely
awesome.
people that are in the chat that certainly helps spread the word as well. So right, we
Yeah.
are at 3 minutes past 10. My back is at 3 minutes past capable. I just want to thank you for coming along.
No worries. Thank
I
you for
hope that
having
our
me.
viewers have found it useful. Thank you so much. Always enjoy, and hopefully you've got a few new fans as well to keep an eye on your Facebook page and your YouTube channel
Yeah.
and see what you're up to. But no doubt, next time I'll see you, either I'll be commenting on your stuff or you'll be commenting on mine. But it's thank you very much for joining us tonight, Elstonation. And
No
for
worries.
everybody else, thank you. Like and subscribe. And we're setting you the challenge. You've got to like and subscribe 2 channels tonight, Wargamer Online and Elstonation. So get along, check us all out. keep up to speed with everything. Frost and Fist has just joined us, I think, and just saying, amazing show tonight. Thanks, Phil. Thanks, Paul. Thanks for being awesome.
Hey.
Have a great night. So at that point, we'll leave it. Have a good night, all. And I believe Sam will see you on Friday for the... it's probably a hobby hangout after last week's mayhem. I think Sam just needs to relax in his room and get some hobby done, but we'll go from there then. Okay, right. Thank you very much, all. I'm going to cut to end credits. One last word from Elsonation.
Thanks for watching, everyone. Subscribe to Warhammer Online. See you next time.
Good night, all. Bye.